welcome to LCM Kids Online. For those who are new to us, we are on this series called Big Questions for Little Kids. The past 2 weeks we have been talking about how heaven and hell is like. This week, as we have known more about God and the blessed path that He wants us to go, the next question we may have is, what is God's plan for me? Now, God has a special plan for each and every one of us, and this plan is different from one person to another. So what is God's special plan for me, you may ask? Well, let us do a little activity before we answer that question, okay? Today's mini activity is called Matching Dash. Let's talk about the materials that we need for this game, alright? Firstly, you will need some Lego blocks, and I want you to have maybe 3 sets of Lego blocks in different colors. Now, if you do not have Lego blocks, you can also use other things like Unifix cubes or wooden blocks. Anything that has 3 different colors and 3 of each. So here I have a turquoise, a pink, and a purple. And for each of this color, I want you to have 3 of them. So for the purple, I want you to get 3. Sorry. Okay, and for your pink, I also want you to get 3. So you don't have to use the same color as mine. Maybe you have yellow or red or blue, that's fine too. Once that is done, I want you to just take them all out and put them in a big tray. So here I have a tray with all the Lego blocks jumbled up. Then next you will need 3 plates. It can be paper plate or plastic plates that you have at home. And finally, we need our trusty tape. Okay, tape is so useful. So we will be needing this later on as well, tape. So onto the preparation. What you need to do is to get your tape, and you're gonna take a starting line in a room, maybe in a living room, a big space, and a finishing line at the other end of the room, okay? Once that is done, go to your finishing line, bring your tray of Legos or Unifix cube or whatever you're using, and just put it behind the finishing line. And in front of the tray, I want you to lay these 3 plates out nicely. Why? Because when you're playing the game later, the objective is the player will be running from the starting line to the tray of Legos, and there'll be a timer running, okay? So you gotta be fast. And then what the player needs to do is to match the Lego by color and put it on each plate, okay? Like that. So you should have 3 plates of different Legos matched nicely to their colors. Once you're done, you can run back to your starting line and the timer will stop. So then the next player will continue doing the same, okay, matching and putting in a plate with the timer running. The game ends when every player has had a turn, and we will compare the timing. The person who finishes the fastest is the winner. So are you ready? Okay, let's play Matching Dash. So, who was the winner of the game? Whoa, you guys did a really great job. You can even go on for a few more rounds to get the hang of it. I hope you guys had fun with that one. Now, during the activity just now, we did some matching, right? Today's question is also related to matching. Our question for today is, what is God's plan for me? How do I know what it is, and how do I match up nicely to it? Just like how we match the Legos by color. Just like the Lego blocks, they have purple, turquoise, and pink. You and I, and the people around you, we all have different qualities, different strengths, different weaknesses, things that we can or cannot do. So because of that, our mighty Daddy God has a very unique plan for each of us. Now, let us read the Bible verse of the week first, shall we? Okay, today's Bible verse comes from Jeremiah 29, verse 11. I will read it in small parts and you will repeat after me. Alright, let's go. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now, God has said in that Bible verse that His special plans for us are good plans to help us grow and not to harm us. Sometimes we may feel angry or sad, but it does not mean that God's plan has stopped for us. He continues to guide us through because He loves us. Now today I'm going to share with you this wonderful story that I love a lot. It's called The Tale of Three Trees.
Three little trees stood on the mountaintop and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars twinkling like diamonds above him. "I want to hold treasure," it said. "I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I will be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world." The second little tree looked out at the river flowing towards the ocean. "I want to be a mighty sailing ship," it said. "I want to travel dangerous waters and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world." The third little tree looked down into the valley where busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. "I don't want to leave this mountaintop at all," it said. "I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world." Years passed. The rains came. The sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. Then, one day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain and saw the 3 tall trees. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful. It's perfect for me." With a swoop of his shining axe, he cut down the first tree. "Now I shall be made into a beautiful treasure chest," thought the first tree. "I shall hold wonderful treasure." The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong. It's perfect for me." With a swoop of his shining axe, he chopped down the second tree. "Now I shall sail mighty waters," thought the second tree. "I shall be a strong ship fit for kings." The third tree felt its heart sink when the last woodcutter looked its way. The tree stood straight and tall, pointed bravely skyward toward heaven, but the woodcutter never even looked up. "Any tree'll do for me," he muttered, and with a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell down to the ground. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought it to a carpenter's shop, but the busy carpenter was not thinking about treasure chests, gold, or jewels. Instead, he used his work-worn hands to make the tree into a feed box for animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with jewels and treasure. It was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took it to a shipyard. But no mighty sailing ships were made that day. Instead, the once strong tree was chopped up and hammered into a small fishing boat. Too small and too weak to sail on an ocean, or even a river, it was put into a little lake. Every day, simple fishermen got on board and filled him with loads of dead, smelly fish. The third tree was confused, for the woodcutter cut him into strong beams and just left him in the lumberyard. What happened? The once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was stay on top of the mountaintop and point to God. Many, many days and nights passed, and the three trees nearly forgot their once precious dreams. Then, one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. "I wish I could make a cradle for him," her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hand and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and sturdy wood. "This manger is beautiful for our little Jesus," she said, and suddenly the first tree knew it was holding the greatest treasure in the entire world. One evening, years after that, a tired traveler and his 12 friends crowded into an old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out into the lake. Soon a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The other men in the boat started screaming in fear that they would all perish. The tree shuddered. It did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and rain. The tired man awakened. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and said, "Peace." The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun. And suddenly, the second tree knew it was carrying the real king, the King of heaven and earth. A little later, on a Friday morning, the third tree was startled when its beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. It flinched as it was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. The tree couldn't believe it when soldiers nailed a man's hands to it. The tree felt ugly and harsh and cruel. But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath it, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It had made the first tree beautiful as all the treasures on earth. It had made the second tree strong, stronger than all kings put together. And every time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God, the greatest treasure, the mightiest king, and the Lord of lords. That was better than being the tallest tree in the world.
Now, from the story, we see that the three trees all had individual dreams for themselves, right? But did they become what they want? When they went to the carpenter or the workshop and they were chopped down and made into different things, it wasn't what they envisioned for themselves to be. And they were sad and disappointed for a while, right? But later, God showed them that even though they did not get what they want, God had even better plans for them, and they became bigger than what they wanted to be. God gave them better plans and better reasons for their lives. Now, children, sometimes we may not know what is lying ahead for us, what's in the future, or we feel upset and lousy and frustrated about not getting what we want. But we must remember, especially from the verse this week, that God's plan is to prosper us and not to harm us. We might not see it now, but we must trust that God has a better idea, better direction, and better blessings more than we can ever think of, just like the three trees. To help you understand better, we are going to make a paper chocolate cake right now, okay? So, our lives are just like a chocolate cake. A chocolate cake is made of different kinds of ingredients. Some ingredients doesn't taste good on its own, like a raw egg. If I let you eat a raw egg, will it be nice? Ugh, no. Or how about oil? I can let you drink some oil. Will it taste good? But there are other ingredients that taste really good on its own, like say sugar. Ooh. Or things like milk. I love milk. Or how about some cocoa powder? We all love chocolate, right? So all these different kind of ingredients, whether they taste good or bad on its own, they are just like the good moments and the bad moments in our lives. Sometimes we may feel bad and shameful and angry, but sometimes we feel happy and good about ourselves. But just like the ingredients, they are all part of a big recipe to be added together to make a delicious end product. And that is the chocolate cake. So let's add my ingredients for my paper chocolate cake, okay? First, we're going to get a bowl and I'm going to be adding some flour. Now we're going to crack a raw egg in. And I'm going to add some sugar. Done. And let's add some oil too, okay? And then let's put some cocoa powder as well. I love cocoa powder. And pour in some milk. Now we're gonna mix it up, okay? Okay, all nice and good. I'm gonna pop it into the oven. Oh, it's done. Oh, let's take it out of the oven. Oh, it's hot. Wow, and a delicious chocolate cake is all done, thanks to all my ingredients. Now children, similar to this chocolate cake story, God has a plan for each of us as well. We may have some good times and some bad times, but they are all part of God's plan to be closer to Him and to bring the people around us closer to Him as well by the different ways that He has prepared for us. We may not like the bad moments and prefer the good ones, but we cannot have one without the other. All of them are needed. Without the good parts of our life, we will lose strength. But without the bad parts, we will lose the need for God. So sometimes children, we are very unsure of what is God's plan for us, but the ultimate purpose is the same. For us to be the light in wherever God has placed us, be the messenger to share about Jesus Christ, and be an example of how a life with Jesus is like. It is not perfect, but we always have hope, we are always assured, and we have a direction for eternity, and that is in heaven. Now, all of you are still very young and you're unsure, but actually, at every stage of our lives, God has a plan in each one. Even if you're small little kids, God has a plan for you right now as well. What is it, you ask me? Well, it could simply be a joy at home for your parents or your grandparents, being a good listener to your friend, listening to their troubles and problems, studying your language well, your English, your Chinese, or any other languages so that you can use it to share God's word in the future, or just praying a simple prayer with your siblings at home. There could be so many different ways that God is guiding us to grow beautifully in our faith. So, do not ever think that God's plan will only come later on or you're too young to be in it. Right now, God can use even the smallest people or things. But most importantly, God doesn't look at how we're like, how old we are, how good we are, but our heart, whether we have a heart that believes and follows Him. That will guide us through our life journey. So kids, to help you to be reminded of the meaning of today's lesson, we are going to be doing a little craft on the tale of 3 trees. Okay, so what we're going to be making today is called cardboard trees. And how many cardboard trees are we making? 3, right? Because in today's story, it's the tale of 3 trees. So the materials that we need are pretty simple. Firstly, I need you to get 2 toilet rolls, okay? Just 2 will do. And you will also need some cardstock paper, meaning paper that are thicker, or you can also use cardboard. Then we also need some color pencils or crayons. This is to decorate your tree later on. And then we also need to do some painting today. So I need you to get some brown and some green paint, okay? Then you will also need your paint brushes and a pot of water to wash your brush. And of course, a palette to put your paint on. Finally, you will also need your scissors. Make sure when there's cutting, you have a grown-up with you to guide you, alright? So once you have all of that, we can start. The first step I want you to do is to grab your toilet roll, okay? And we're going to leave one toilet roll on its own. Well, for the other one, I want you to cut it into half. Alright, so grab your scissors and cut, and make sure you have a grown-up to help you cut, okay? Oh. Alright, so now I have 2 small rolls. Now, these 3 toilet rolls will be the trunk of your tree, alright? And why did I leave this uncut? Because the last tree wanted to be the tallest tree, remember? So we're gonna leave it as the tallest toilet roll. Now, on to the leaves part, right? Since we have the trunk, now we need the leaves as well. Grab your cardstock paper or your cardboard, and we're going to be cutting out some irregular tree shapes, okay? Make sure when you're drawing the shape, it is wider than your tree trunk, okay? It cannot be smaller. So when you draw it out, it should look like that. Something like that, okay? So you put it against your tree trunk, see? The tree shape is wider. So go on and draw another 2 irregular shapes. You can be creative with your shapes. It can be like just a triangle shape or like mine, an irregular jagged circle. My second one looks like an onigiri. Okay, let's continue. Okay, once you're done drawing your 3 tree shapes, you're going to be cutting them out. Okay, so again, get a grown-up to help you with the cutting part. Alright, let's cut. Okay, so here are my 3 tree shapes. Now that we're done with our trunks and our tree shape, it's time to add some colors. So I'm going to be painting my tree shape first, okay, because we need to leave it to dry and draw something on it. So we're going to paint this first. So grab your green paint. I actually played with some shades. I got a light green and a dark green, so I have different kinds of tree leaves color. Alright, so squeeze it on your palette, grab your paintbrush, get your water ready, and you can start painting your tree shape. So I'm just gonna squeeze out my green, dark green, and my light green paint first. There you go, like this. And I'll just grab one of my trees. Okay, maybe I'll do this one first. And just wet your brush, start painting. Now make sure again, don't wet your brush too much, because what happens when the paint is too wet, it will take longer to dry, okay? So just dab a little bit of water from your pot and mix it with your paint and just paint around. Now when I'm painting the tree shapes, make sure you paint on both sides. So I'm done with my first side, I'm gonna paint the other side, okay? On to the next one. My onigiri shape one, I'm gonna probably paint it dark green. Now onto your third tree shape. I'm gonna go with the first green. Okay, so I'm done with all 3 of my tree shapes. They're all painted green already on both sides, and I'll leave them to dry. What you're gonna do now is to move on to your toilet rolls, which is your tree trunks, and grab your brown paint. Squeeze it out. Again, grab your paintbrush and just start painting your tree trunks. If you don't want to dirty your hand, just put the toilet roll through 3 of your fingers. Okay, and then you can move around freely to paint it. Alright, let's start painting. Okay, so I'm done with this trunk. Now move on to the next one. Now, tree trunks are usually really rough, so it's okay if you don't paint every corner. It's good to have that rough and messy look. The second one. Now on to my last one, which is the tallest toilet roll. Okay, I'm done with my third tree trunk as well. So all the tree trunks are done. Now that you're done with your tree trunk, you're gonna move on to your tree shapes, and you're gonna grab your color pencil. What you're gonna do now is you can draw different designs and patterns on your tree shape. You can draw stripes, zigzag lines, or you can even draw leaf shapes if you want to on it. Okay, so I'm gonna start drawing mine. So I draw zigzag lines, zigzag gray lines for my first one. And I'll go on to my second one. Okay, for my second one, I did dark blue curvy lines like that, so it looks a little bit like the tree leaves. And for the third one, Okay, for the third one, I draw some orange stripes. Now that I'm done with all the 3 tree shapes, we are going to move on to the trunk. So how are you going to put the tree shape on the trunk, right? So this is where you get your scissors, and we're going to be cutting some slits on the tree trunk, alright? So what we're going to do is, we're going to be cutting a short slit over here, about this length, maybe 5 cm, on this side. And right opposite this slit, over here, you're going to cut another 5 cm, okay? So right opposite the slit. Okay, so done. Now I have 2 slits over here, can you see? One over this side and one over this side. So here and here. So now that you have your slits, you have a place to slot your tree shape in. Okay, one on this side and one on the other side. See? So that's for the first tree. Now move on to the other toilet rolls. Same thing again. Make a 5 cm slit on each side, opposite each other. Like that again. The 2 slits, one here and one here. And you can put in your other tree shape right through. There you go. That's my second tree. And move on to your final tree, which is the tallest tree, right? Okay, so again, make a 5 cm slit on the opposite sides. And we'll slot in my final tree shape. Whew. This is my tallest tree. Well, these are my 3 trees standing before you right now. Wow, they're so tall you can't even see me. Well, I hope you enjoyed making these 3 trees to help you remember the story today, and that God has a very unique plan for each of us, even better than what we have for ourselves. Now, let's think of where we can put our 3 trees. I'm probably gonna put it on my work shelf over there. And for you, put it somewhere where you can remind yourself that we may have plans and dreams for ourselves, but when we trust and believe in Jesus, He will show us what greater plans He has for us, just like the 3 trees who became the manger for Jesus, the boat, and the cross. Take care, kids. I will see you next week. Bye!